Morning, everybody, and welcome to our AGM. Once again, we're doing it virtually. A year ago, we started off on this track, and I didn't think a year later we'd still be doing it, but here we are. I'm actually going to be live at the support centre up in Manchester, where I've got Steve Murrells, our CEO, Shireen, our CFO, Helen Grantham, who's our group secretary, and Nick Cross, who's the president of the council. Stevie Spring, who's our remuneration committee chair, she'll be rejoining us remotely from London. We've also got 20 other colleagues here to make sure that we're quorate, but obviously we're trying to follow the government guidelines as closely as we possibly can. To do it virtually, as last year, we've done some pre-records so that we could get as many people in front of you as possible. And we've also asked you to do for votes in advance, again, because it's probably easier, we think, to do it that way than to try and do it online in some way, shape or form. The Q&A we will be able to do. We've had some pre-submitted Q&As, again, which we've done some pre-recording of because we wanted some of our other colleagues to be able to answer those. But also, we'll be able to do some Q&A live, and I'll cover that a bit later on. Now, this AGM is really looking at what happened in 2020, and you can imagine there's a lot to talk about, and Shireen and Steve will do that. I mean, it is a year ago that Steve and I started talking about our vision of cooperating for a fairer world, and never has that been more relevant than it's been in the past 12 months, and I think something that's going to be incredibly relevant and compelling for the next 10 years, and that's the way I think that we need to think about it. During this time, certainly the last 12 months, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do in communities. You know, the cooperative is a community organisation. Our members live in the communities. We do our best work in the communities. You know, we've been very hyper-local in what we've been doing. And that relevancy of cooperation and cooperation in communities, I think, has been very important for us. I'm very proud of that. That's all due to the resilience and commitment of our people, our colleagues. They have been phenomenal. You know, working very difficult circumstances in all sorts of aspects of our organisation, and they've done an incredible job. I can't speak highly of them, more highly of them. They've been above and beyond the call of duty and have been a great credit to a cooperative movement in this country. Also, unfortunately, during this period of time, we've lost colleagues and we've lost members. And, you know, when you see all the numbers that come up on a daily basis, and particularly when they were so big, it's very easy to forget that these are individuals and they've got families and all of the things that go along with that. So we need to remember those colleagues and those members, and I'd like to pass on my condolences to them, and more importantly, I think we all have them in our prayers as we think about, you know, the light that they brought to their lives and to our lives for those of us that knew them. The other piece of that's had to work in this virtual world of ours has been the Members' Council again, and they've kept going, had their virtual meetings, you know, kept, you know, driving things forward, to being, you know, demanding and of, you know, what's happening in the organisation, what are we trying to do, but at the same time being very, very helpful, and particularly again very helpful in the community. So I'd really like to pass my thanks to the Members' Council. You know, they too done a sterling job in all of this. And a special thanks really to Nick Crofts, who's the president. He's come to his maximum term, so this will be his last AGM. And Nick's been a very good president, I think, for the cooperative. He's testing, he's demanding, but he's supportive too, and he's tried, I think, in many ways to modernise the council in the same way that we're trying to modernise the whole organisation. That's something we've got to continue to do. So great thanks to you, Nick. Also, we lose one of our MMDs, Hazel Blears. Hazel was one of the original MMDs and has been with us that period of time. She's been fantastic. She's, you know, really engaged in what we do. The work she's done on some of these apprenticeships and social inclusion, things like that are phenomenal, and we're really going to miss her. We love you a lot, Hazel, and we're really going to miss you. But that also means that we've got to have a new MD, and there'll be more of that later when we announce the results of who you've decided to elect to be your member nominated director. Now, the agenda for the day is Steve will give us an update. Shireen will talk a bit about the numbers. Stevie will talk clearly about the remuneration. Nick will then do the President's report, and then Steve's going to look a little bit more in the future. We'll then do Q&As. We've got a AGM inbox here that's had some questions already. We're going to answer those, and we'll be able to do those live. We'll have members of our and colleagues who can sift through the questions and pass them on to us, and I'll then allocate them out, and we'll answer as many as we possibly can, and we'll try and answer everybody's questions at some stage, even if we follow up that digitally. So let's get on with the show. Let's try and have another good AGM. You know, the feedback from last year's was very good, and with that, let me hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Alan. Hello and welcome to all our members and colleagues watching this today. We're back online for the second year, which is still the right and the safe thing to do in line with government guidelines as we cautiously ease our way out of lockdown. Today, I wanted to start with some reflections and to mark an important year that's been both extraordinary and unprecedented for us all. I'll then come back to you later to talk about our plans for the future, to build our nation back better, and more importantly, build it back different. Before I do that, can I invite you to join me in a minute's silence so we can take a moment to remember those we've lost during this devastating virus. Thank you. I want to follow that by saying a huge thank you to everyone for the last 12 months. Our co-op response to the pandemic has been absolutely incredible, and I'm so proud and grateful to our colleagues, our member pioneers, and all of you out there for everything that you've done for our members and communities throughout this period. For me, the last year or so has certainly impacted on how I do my job alongside my home life, and it's made me step back and completely reappraise what life has been like before COVID, and made me realise what I value most and hold close to my heart. With our co-op being at the centre of communities, we're not only able to keep our nation fed, but also support the bereaved in the most difficult of circumstances, continue providing legal and insurance services, and get prescriptions to those that needed them. In fact, so great was the effort in our response to the pandemic that 6 of our wonderful co-op team were recognised in the Queen's Honours List for their outstanding work, between them receiving 2 BEMs, 3 MBEs and a CBE. Absolutely fantastic. In addition to this, we took our legal offer online. We relaunched Co-op Power and we completed the sale of our insurance underwriting business, allowing us to focus on developing new and exciting insurance products for our customers and members. I'm not going to do justice to the amazing achievements over the last year by simply talking about them. So please join me in watching this short film that really brings everything we've done to life. I'm confident that if the Rochdale pioneers were here watching with us today, they'd have been proud of what we've achieved, what you've achieved. What this film shows is that no matter how tough things got, we never lost sight of our vision and our purpose. Our North Star of cooperating for a fairer world guided us through the various twists and turns. You can see from our actions and response that every decision has been made with our vision in mind, which, importantly, was what the country wanted and needed from us. We've listened, we've responded, become more resilient, more innovative, even more cooperative. With all things considered, we had another successful year, one focused on delivering what mattered for our members, our colleagues, and their communities. Most of our support centre and office-based colleagues moved to remote working. We invested in tech to allow people to connect with each other and to stay close, even though we'd never been further apart. But working from home wasn't possible for many of our colleagues as they continued to work on the front line in our funeral homes, our care centres, our stores, our depots and our contact centres. As key workers, they've been the true co-op heroes of this pandemic. Whether at home, in the office or on the front line, this year has been tough for everyone, both in their work and their personal lives. It's been our job as a leadership team to keep people safe, both physically and mentally. Our colleague networks, run purely by volunteers, were outstanding throughout the pandemic, offering much needed support whilst continuing to champion important issues across gender, race, disability, youth, and LGBTQ matters. We made sure colleagues were paid and supported when off sick or shielding and provided help for colleagues with childcare challenges. We welcomed family and pets into our new co-op virtual world. We recruited over 7,000 temporary workers, targeting those who are out of employment in the hospitality industry. We worked night and day to source the right PPE equipment, set new guidelines to stay safe at work, and installed additional protective equipment across all our stores, our depots, our funeral homes and offices. We celebrated our local heroes and we launched Co-op Care, offering advice for colleagues on managing their mental health and their well-being. And we continue to recognise and reward the incredible efforts of everyone, especially those on the front line, with a special bonus, recognition events and our commitment to align hourly pay rates to the real living wage. And our voice was equally heard loud and proud on matters we know our members care passionately about and the social injustices which prevailed during the year. We were a vital member of the Stop Child Poverty Task Force created by Marcus Rashford. Our brilliant public affairs team supported Marcus in his efforts to campaign for free school meals, and we led the pack by funding over 3 million of our own free school meal vouchers for Co-op Academy students. We also reached out to FareShare, who we have a long-standing relationship with, to truly understand what support they needed from us. In the height of lockdown, we gave them access to food straight from our depots, provided much needed financial support through our in-store campaigns, and even donated our Easter TV airtime to raise awareness to their cause, generating even more donations. And of course, we also launched our own member coronavirus fund, which saw Co-op members raise over £500,000 by donating their unspent shopping reward. This meant that more financial help went to local causes, supporting local communities through the pandemic. It also led to the creation of the Funeral Care Hardship Fund, which provided much needed help to those families suffering financial difficulty, whilst having to arrange a funeral for a loved one lost through the pandemic. This was in addition to the many millions which members continue to generate for thousands of local causes across the country. Co-op member engagement in supporting local causes continues to remain very high, and last year saw us reach a notable milestone, with the 2 millionth Co-op member choosing to support a local cause that matters to them through our local community fund. In early July, the government finally published their response to its call for evidence on shop worker violence, and whilst we welcomed some of the measures, we felt it didn't go far enough. Joe Whitfield brought together the CEOs of 22 other retailers and industry bodies calling upon the government to provide extra protection. This campaign continues, but to be blunt, it's simply not part of the job for our colleagues to experience such abuse and will not let up in our pursuit for greater protection. And also, I'd like to make a special call out to Maroof Chowdhury, who on our behalf featured on the Channel 4 campaign Together Against Hate. And none of us will ever forget the tragic death of George Floyd in America, or the events that followed. On behalf of Co-op, I was one of the first business leaders to speak out on this atrocity and to acknowledge that we needed to improve our own diversity and inclusion performance, especially in the areas of racial equality. We won't stand by when we see racism happening and will speak out and act against it. I am crystal clear that we must be anti-racist in everything that we do at the Co-op. So, in true Co-op tradition, we quickly mobilised ourselves and in September announced what has been described as the most challenging set of racial equality commitments ever by a UK business. To help guide us, we've created an equality and inclusion think tank made up of some of the greatest activists and experts in this area to ensure that our diversity and inclusion agenda continues to run through our Co-op vision and strategy. So we clearly achieved a lot, but this would not have been possible if our Co-op had not entered the crisis in good shape. 2020 was an incredible year for us, full of so many emotions and memories, but one where our unique way of doing business shone brighter than ever as a beacon of light for others to follow. A year which I'll truly never want to forget, as it will be important to reflect on the difference we've made as a business. In many ways, a springboard to build back better and different for the future. But more on that a little later, when I'll return to talk about how we intend to move forward with our vision and strategy this year. Before I hand over to Shireen, who will take us through the 2020 results in more detail, I'd like us all to take a bow and hold a virtual round of applause for our achievements last year. We might not be able to hear one another, but I'm sure we can all appreciate the electrifying and heartwarming sound of a collective thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Steve. What a great summary of a truly unexpected year. It's good to be here today talking to you, as this is my second AGM as CFO and follows my first full year at our Co-op. 2020 has taught us all so much, both professionally and personally. What we achieved together as a Co-op and the role we played in the pandemic is second to none. For me, it's been a mixture of pride for how all of our colleagues stepped up to serve our nation, as well as dealing with all of the personal challenges that COVID has brought all of us. For our Co-op, it taught us that our vision, cooperating for a fairer world, and our strategy to deliver it have never been more relevant or important. And we know that compared to others, we were lucky to have delivered a positive set of results for 2020, which most importantly allowed us to give back to our colleagues, members, and communities. Today, it's my job to talk you through our performance and how it contributed to delivering our vision during 2020. Overall, we had a successful year. All of our business areas performed well, despite the challenges we faced, and revenues and profits were both up on 2019. Our revenue increased by $600 million to $11.5 billion. Our group underlying profit was $235 million, up from $173 million in 2019. And when we exclude the impact of IFRS 15, group underlying profit was $228 million, up from $169 million in 2019. Our reported profit before tax was $127 million, up from $24 million in 2019. And excluding again the impact of IFRS 15, profit before tax was $92 million, up from $67 million in 2019. Additional costs directly related to COVID-19 have been around $84 million, and this includes recruiting 7,000 new colleagues, buying PPE equipment, and increased costs linked to colleague absences caused by the virus. Our support from the government's emergency economic measures amounted to $82 million, covering the business rates holiday for our food stores and funeral homes, as well as furlough payments to our colleagues. In food, we saw sales of $7.8 billion, up 3.5% on 2019, with like-for-like sales up 6.9%. And driven by online expansion, we saw the biggest growth of the whole lockdown period in April 2020, with a 42% year-on-year growth, as customers and members tried to avoid supermarket queues and stay and shop close to home. During that first 4-week period of lockdown, we welcomed 2.4 million new shoppers, 1/3 of our customer base through our doors. And we saw this replicated in our wholesale business too, as NISA had record sales of £1.6 billion compared to £1.4 billion in 2019, with a further 624 independent stores signing up. In funeral care, we saw a dramatic increase in the number of funerals we arranged, with 10,290 more funerals conducted than in 2019, an increase of 11.4%, which sadly reflects the deaths caused by COVID-19. And we should also think about the pressure that was on our funeral care colleagues as they tried to do their very best for the deceased and their loved ones in the most difficult of times. They, along with our colleagues in stores, deserve our heartfelt thanks. And back to our financial results, restrictions on the types of funerals available during the pandemic meant that the average selling price of a funeral reduced considerably during the year. And so revenue in our funeral care business was flat year on year at $272 million. In legal services, we saw case volumes grow by 9% in 2020. We had an early increase in will writing work at the start of the pandemic, and then above average inquiries about divorce as the strains on family relationships created by lockdown began to show. Canceled house viewings, delayed house sales, reduced interest rates, and delays in processing paperwork all impacted legal services revenue in 2020, and it was down $2 million on 2019 to £37 million. And in our insurance business, we also felt the impact of COVID, with reduced sales during the spring and early summer, particularly for motor and travel policies, as lockdown restrictions impacted trading across the entire sector. Following the completion of a 13-year agreement with Marker Study in December 2020, we did see revenue in our new insurance distribution business grow to $5.9 million, an increase of nearly $4 million on 2019. Now, at this point, it's important that I mention the accounting treatment that we used, which led us to restating our 2019 numbers. We've worked very hard with our auditors and the FRC on how to apply the IFRS 15 standard appropriately so that they would not create false volatility. And as a result, you'll see two sets of accounts, including IFRS 15 and excluding. We also received an unqualified audit opinion after EY qualified our accounts last year on this issue. All of this is testament to our finance teams for working tirelessly with the FRC and EY to successfully conclude on these matters. And as I mentioned earlier, as the pandemic began to take hold, it was evident that our strategy was the right one. We knew the communities in which we live, work, and operate would need us, and we took steps very quickly to make sure that we could escalate support. And this is what makes our co-op so special. During 2020, we gave more than £12 million to charities and communities as part of our COVID-19 response, including, as Steve mentioned, over £900,000 of support to Fair Share through a number of channels, and free school meals and support to our co-op academy schools. This was in addition to the £15 million shared with 4,500 local causes from the Local Community Fund. We also sold the big issue in our stores for the first time ever and donated over 1,000 laptops to help support families of children in our co-op academies with homeschooling. We also recognize the incredible efforts of our colleagues, especially those on the front line, with a special colleague bonus amounting to £25 million. Now, we know that 2021 is going to be another tough year as the world begins its journey to recovery. We've had to accept that we're operating in a highly challenging and uncertain environment. And we know that those businesses that can combine social purpose with commercial agility and innovation will win. And we, as a co-op, are perfectly placed to do this in the new post-COVID world. We have a significant role to play, and our vision and strategy are aligned to the social and economic challenges ahead. We know the ability to work at pace, observe, respond, and flex accordingly will continue to be essential. And we'll really need to watch how we use our resources so that we continue to build a stronger and more resilient co-op. We've made some tough decisions already to protect our core businesses, our colleagues, our customers, and members. For example, the recent sale of Co-op Health. Staying focused on those areas in which we can scale and grow will be important to our success. And we know cost management and operational efficiency will also be critical and at the heart of our focus. So we have exciting opportunities and we're operating in a challenging environment. But as always, I know that we'll face them head on and adapt and overcome them in our unique co-op way. Thank you all very much, and I'll be very happy to take any questions later. Now it's over to Stevie, who's going to give you an overview of the activities of the Remuneration Committee during the year.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for the chance to talk through some of the highlights of my sixth, where does time go? My sixth remuneration report. Such a shame yet again not to see our members at the AGM in real life. I much prefer the less formal two-way dialogues we can have in person. But as always, I'm very happy to answer all the questions you might have, whether that's at today's meeting or at a later date. And I'm going to assume that lots of you have read my remuneration report already, so I'll just pull out a few key themes and the main issues that I think will be of the most interest to the most members. And I'll try and explain the rationale behind the pay and bonus decisions we've made in a very difficult year. But I want to start by adding my own thank you to all of our colleagues, including exec colleagues, for the fantastic job they did in 2020, and indeed are still doing. Colleagues right across our co-op have been real local community heroes, showing incredible commitment, real resilience, especially during the lockdowns, and they've really been walking the walk of our cooperating for a fairer world vision. And to recognise that commitment during the first lockdown, each one of our 56,000 frontline colleagues got a thank you package of £150 in cash and co-op vouchers, along with an extra day's holiday. And we put up a discount to 20% for all colleagues on all own brand at all times, and that's a very meaningful everyday benefit. And on every payday, we're giving that 20% on all branded goods too. In the run-up to Christmas, we did a special 12 Days of Togetherness campaign, different benefit every day, including £50 onto the membership card and a half price on all co-op goods day. In all, that was an investment of about £25 million, a lot, but absolutely the right thing to do, and the feedback has been brilliant. But those extras are, if you like, the icing on the cake. The committee was really pleased that this year we've managed to align base hourly rates to the real living wage, the one set by the Living Wage Foundation, which is higher than either the national living wage or the national minimum wage. So in cash terms, for our CTMs, this means a rise from £9 to £9.50 an hour, £10.85 if you're working in London, and still, unlike many competitors, those rates apply to everyone, under 25s, apprentices, everyone. And you'll remember from prior years' presentations that every 15p uplift adds £10 million to the salary bill run rate. So it's a significant permanent investment, but it's important to recognise the role that our frontline colleagues play in our success. We've now raised hourly pay rates for CTMs by 25% in the past 4 years, but we're not resting on our laurels. Improving frontline colleague pay is still a key area of focus for the exec, for the committee, and indeed for the whole board. We still want to do more, but we know we have to balance pay investments with investment decisions we make for members and for customers too. Now, onto our execs and more senior leaders, which is where some of the most difficult discussions take place, and where literally every one of our members, our owners, every one of them has a view on who should own what. It's the REMCO's job to assess performance against the targets we set, to weigh up all the data, to look at all the headwinds and tailwinds in the market, and if necessary, to use discretion to come to a fair and balanced outturn in the round. One that rewards performance and allows us to recruit and keep the talent we need to run a very complex organisation of scale, but that reflects our principles and values. We made only a couple of changes to our exec team during 2020. Pippa Wicks stepped down in June. Thank you, Pippa, and good luck at John Lewis. But there was no termination or deferred bonus payment made. And following a reorganisation of the exec, Shireen has taken on the additional role of Chief Executive for Life Services, as well as her existing Chief Financial Officer responsibilities. In recognition and to reflect her impressive performance through the probationary year, the committee increased Shireen's salary from 610 to 650,000 with effect from September the 1st, 2020. That was the only exec team pay change, even though Helen Grantham also took over risk and audit, Jo added property and power to her list, and Helen Webb's now got procurement. So a much smaller and a much lower cost top team than at any point in our recent history. Turning now to the thorny issue of bonuses. When we launched our 2020 bonus plan, the pandemic was already beginning to have an impact. But we agreed that a balanced scorecard, which had financial, membership, colleague and community targets, was still right, despite the challenge of setting those targets, particularly the financial ones, in such unprecedented times. So we were very clear to all participants, all 8,500, that everything on the 2020 scorecard would be assessed in the round, because sure as night follows day, results were going to be distorted up and down, positive and negative, by those headwinds and tailwinds, the uncertainties that the pandemic created. At year close, we reviewed each of those measures very robustly over a number of meetings, and for the avoidance of doubt before anybody asks, all government support monies for both furlough and business rates were stripped out of the profit figure for the all-important financial result, all of them. And based solely on performance against all the scorecard measures, the bonus outturn was a tad shy of stretch. But of course, we couldn't be tone deaf to the national backdrop. And we needed to acknowledge our market benefit of being in the sweet spot, if you like, of convenience food retail, at times with travel restrictions, when other hospitality, when non-essential outlets, they were all closed. So we used discretion downwards to reduce the overall financial number from above, even stretch, to a smidge above target. We also recommended a reallocation of the bonus pot to pay out a greater proportion to our 8,000 odd colleagues in the plan below executive and senior leaders. So with all those ups and downs, our execs got between 65 and a bit and 70 and a bit % of their maximum opportunity, depending on their personal performance grade, pretty flat to last year. But the allocation gave a substantial increase to grades C to H. And remember, only half of the award to exec and senior leaders is paid now, the other half deferred for 2 years, but there's no deferral for other colleagues. So a word about well-being. Everyone's well-being continues to be a priority, never more so than through the pandemic. All of us needed to feel supported with our physical well-being, with our mental well-being, with our financial well-being. And we're guided in what we do by what colleagues tell us matters most. We use focus groups to shape those services. So we've been in regular contact with every colleague through our co-op care communications, which all have guidance and advice on how to cope and indeed flourish. We offered everyone a free flu jab. 10,000 were taken up. Our wellbeing platform, which offers an ever-growing range of self-help resource services, is increasingly also being used to give peer-to-peer recognition. We also developed our own bespoke mental health awareness training, on track to have rolled that out to 5,000 managers by the end of 2021. And we've just launched 2 new benefits: a virtual health service, which gives colleagues and their families access to GP services 24/7, as well as mental health, complex medical case, nutrition and fitness support. And as part of our financial wellbeing package, a pay advance service, which gives access to accrued pay between paydays. As I said, it's colleagues' feedback that shapes wellbeing investments, so we know that they are valued. Well, I've overrun, I've run out of my allotted time. Hopefully, I've covered off the areas of reward that members tell me matter most. And for 2021, well, look, we know it's going to be another very challenging year. That's very hard to forecast. So we'll just continue to review our approach to pay throughout this year as well. For now, on your behalf, I'd like to thank my committee for the work they do. I'd like to thank the Council Remuneration Working Group, very ably led by Leslie Resnicek, for their challenge, for their support, and especially for their help in shaping our bonus plan scorecard. And I'd like to thank you, our members, for your support voting for the annual report on remuneration. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nick Crofts, President of the National Members Council. I'm delighted to be able to join our virtual AGM for one final time as our Society's President. It's now more than 12 months since the beginning of the first lockdown, and we've faced a crisis that was unimaginable even a year ago. And once again, our co-op has risen to the occasion. 6 years ago, in my first speech as President, I said that the cooperators of today stand on the shoulders of giants, those pioneers that began our global movement in 1844. But now we stand in the company of modern-day giants, our colleagues who fed the nation and cared for the deceased and the bereaved. Our colleagues who've spent the last year on the front line supporting our communities through the worst of the pandemic. To all of our colleagues in every store and funeral home, in every depot and every office, to all of our colleagues in every nation and region of the UK, thank you for all that you've done. You are giants and you are the glue that binds our co-op together. Council is tremendously proud of all that you've achieved and tremendously grateful for the way that you have done it. Thank you. With much of our normal life having been on hold, it's been an opportunity to reflect on the journey that we've been on during the 6 years of my presidency. Our council and our co-op have achieved so much. Our Member Pioneer programme is Council's proudest initiative. We developed the programme in the firm belief that Member Pioneers would help bring our co-op and people together and to implement real change locally. Now there are 1,000 Member Pioneers and they're doing just that, making our communities better places to live, work, play and learn. And I'm particularly grateful for the integral role that they've played in our COVID response by helping people get access to essentials and volunteering with local charities and community groups. This is cooperation in action. Another proud initiative that Council has championed is Join In. The co-op wouldn't be a co-op if our members couldn't get involved in the society that they own. And 2020 was a record-breaking year. 250,000 members joined in, and our amazing Join In team played an essential role in our response to the pandemic with a wide range of wellbeing initiatives. We checked in with members to see how they were coping and to explore what the co-op and other members could do to support their physical and mental wellbeing. We were able to make a real difference for tens of thousands of members. Our Join In team delivered opportunities for members to connect through monthly online members quizzes and Christmas get-togethers for those on their own over the holidays, to learn by joining online producer-led wine and beer events, to keep active by offering online puzzles, and brought together over 1,000 members in our Around the World Step Challenge, and to support each other by piloting our incredibly important online bereavement story groups. Our young members group also paused its projects to focus on supporting people's well-being through the crisis. Members of the group spoke to hundreds of young people to find out what they were struggling with and to explore ways that they and the co-op could help. Working with co-op colleagues, the young members group developed and delivered a free online skills programme called Boost that provided opportunities for 16 to 25-year-olds to connect and learn with us online to help build motivation, resilience and other practical skills. We know that many members have found these activities to be incredibly supportive in what was an unprecedented year and a real example of how our members coming together can help us support one another. Work also began with a group of members who've offered to help us deliver our commitments to anti-racism and better representation of the full diversity of our membership. This again is cooperation in action. And Council has now spent years engaging deeply with the business. It was Council that championed our co-op's accreditation with the Fair Tax mark, because tax matters and an ethical business should pay the right amount of tax at the right time and at the right place. And in joining the scheme, our co-op took a leading position on a crucial ethical issue. It was Council that championed our co-op returning to its roots as a wholesaler, getting our co-op own brand products into thousands more locations with our nicer acquisition. Because cooperators know that it's not just what we do, but how we do it that matters. And it was Council that consistently championed the real living wage for our colleagues, those working on the front line. We can all be proud that once again, our co-op is at the forefront, making sure our colleagues are rewarded fairly. And Council has played a leading role in our campaigns, because campaigning on social issues that matter to our members is a key part of our cooperative difference. Council has always made the safety of our colleagues its #1 priority. and it was proud to approve and campaign on the Safer Colleagues, Safer Communities initiative. Violence, threats and abuse of our store colleagues is just plain wrong, and Council is tremendously proud of the work that it has done to champion tackling the issue. All of Council's successes have been built on its relationships with the board and with the business. Strong, trusting, open relationships, candid relationships, offering both support and challenge. That is what cooperation is. But of course, it's right not to just look back, but to look forward as well. The co-op is always at its best when it is radical, facing the future and looking to solve real-world problems. It was the real-world problems of working people that drove our pioneers to begin our society in 1844. Their mission was not to transform the provision of groceries in Rochdale, necessary though that was, but rather their mission was to change the world. And they succeeded, as they could not possibly have imagined. Our co-op began a radical movement that is changing the world to this day. 1 billion members of co-ops worldwide, 100 million people employed by co-ops, and that radicalism reverberates in our co-op to this day. Whether it's our leading-edge ambition on climate change or our commitment to tackling deeply ingrained racial injustice, our co-op rightly is at the vanguard. We've accomplished so much, but there remains much more to do. My time as president is almost at its end. Serving our co-op, our members, championing our movement and our colleagues has been the greatest privilege of my life. I have heartfelt gratitude for all of those that have supported me, voted for me, encouraged me and challenged me. I'm grateful now to have the opportunity to continue to bring our cooperative values to life in my new role, running the Co-op Foundation, the Co-op's own charity. 6 years ago, I said that our co-op was the people's business. Our response to COVID has shown that that has never been more true. We survived the crisis that was built on our own hubris, and now we turn our face to the future by remaining true to our values, proud of our heritage, but certain in the knowledge that the best days for our co-op lie in the future and not the past. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. We're now switching to the live part of where we are. We're in Angel Square. You saw some of the shots a bit earlier on. And as I say, we'll try and move now to some more of the live part in terms of questions, etc. I want to thank all of the speakers so far for bringing us up to date. And as I say, we're still having to do it in that Zoom world, but it seems to work, at least in some way, shape or form. So thanks everybody for all your contributions so far. What we're going to do is, as you know, we asked for some pre-Q&As so that we could use other colleagues to answer some of those. So we're going to start with the pre-record Q&As. Then we've had some other Q&As sent in which we'll answer live, and then we will move to the live questions which we'll do through Mark, and I'll sort of talk about how we're going to do that a bit later on. So I think we'll start with the first pre-record Q&As, and I think we're going to move to that now.
So we have one early question already about bonus for all. When will all colleagues be included in the bonus scheme, not just management? Well, as I said in my little piece, outside the 8,500 colleagues in the bonus scheme, 56,000 had, inverted commas, bonuses in the summer and again at Christmas, £200 cash in total, plus a load of other benefits that came to a total of about 25 million investment. And obviously we increased regular pay to the real living wage. And, you know, frankly, colleagues consistently say they'd much rather have hourly payments increased than the potential of a bonus? Well, frankly, I'd like to do both. All I can say is it's on the radar, we are looking at it, and of course we have to balance those investment decisions against our investment in price, our investment for members, our investment for customers, but we're on the case.
My name's Chris Conway. I'm the head of e-commerce here at Co-op. We've had a question from Joe Mitchell. Why was Deliveroo chosen as a partner for delivery? Well, we know our members and customers want access to our food in our communities through online channels, and we need to find a way to deliver to them. We've embarked on an ambitious project to roll out our own Co-op online platform, working with trusted partners to try and cover as many of our communities as possible. This takes time and resources to get to a scale where it meets our customers' needs viably, and working with multiple partners like Deliveroo has given us the scale to reach more of our customers more quickly. We're using low and zero emission local deliveries through our online convenience model, which also benefits our high street stores. We're working closely with all our partners, and Deliveroo provide us with assurances about their riders' pay and conditions, and also share with us that their riders are largely satisfied with how they work with high engagement scores. Deliveroo have also supported Co-op on the Felix project, delivering over 1 million meals to those most in need, and also supported our community fund. We continue to work with all our partners, working to influence them to support our cooperative principles and deliver value with values conveniently. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isla. I'm the Fisheries and Aquaculture Manager at Co-op, and I'm here to answer a question from Jocasta Fletcher asking why we sell seafood at Co-op that's been caught using the trawling fishing method. So thanks for your question. As you've acknowledged, we do quite a lot of work on responsible sourcing of seafood and healthy oceans as part of our wider responsible sourcing work. And this includes having a risk assessment process in place for all seafood, whether it's an ingredient or a fresh product at Co-op, which takes into account the latest science, advice from industry experts, and assesses the impact of different fishing methods, such as bottom trawling. We're always looking at different innovations within the industry and ways that we can support sustainable improvements. So, for example, we support Project UK, which is working with 8 UK fisheries to help them become more sustainable for the future.
Hi, my name's Stuart Hookins. I'm the Property Director for the Co-op. We've had a question from Jonathan Cook asking about the installation of electric vehicle charging points in our estate. You'll be aware that we've committed to reducing carbon from our operations and our products recently, and taking clear practical steps to reduce carbon from running our business. This includes our full estate running on 100% renewable electricity and the use of natural refrigerants in our food store estate. We're also exploring new ways that all of our properties can be more energy efficient. We're doing a lot of work on electric vehicle charging across the Co-op as electric vehicles become more prevalent and the technology for charging them develops. We've recently committed to the electrification of our home delivery fleet, and we're starting to install electric vehicle charging into our care centres in funeral care. Given the nature of our convenience store business, we recognise that higher powered chargers are required to meet our customer needs, and this technology is changing quickly. We've identified a partner, and we're looking to install fast charging EV into our existing food store estate where it's practical and viable to do so, and this will be rolled out over the coming years.
Good. Thank you for those pre-recorded questions and those answers. I want to move now to a much more live state. We've got, I know, some pre-recorded questions which Mark out there is going to read out, so I'm going to pass on, and we'll do those, and then we'll move to live. So, Mark, what have we got? What are the pre-records we need to pick up on?
Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, we've got some pre-submitted questions from members already. The first one is from Sally Ford on the better chicken commitment. I'm supporting Chris Packham's campaign to get supermarkets to sign up to the Better Chicken commitment. A huge number of food companies in the UK already have, and as an ethical supermarket, I would expect Co-op to meet those standards as a minimum across its entire chicken meat range. The second one is about Co-op Health Sale, and that's from Jocasta Fletcher. As a Co-op Health app customer, I was very disappointed to see the business being sold so soon after going live. I believe this type of business allows us to make a real social difference and impact following the sale of the pharmacy business. We need to be brave and speculate on businesses for the long term, as our Rochdale Pioneer founders did. And then the final one on the pre-submitted is for Tackling Obesity and Healthier Products by Dr. Mike Thompson. The COVID-19 pandemic has further emphasised the need to tackle obesity and create healthier food environments. In response, the UK government plans to restrict the advertising, promotion and placement of less healthy products. At the same time, people are also demanding healthier products. To remain competitive and reduce financial risks, companies must shift their sales and portfolio towards healthier products. We commend the Co-op for its efforts in this space and for committing to price parity for its healthier options. However, in light of upcoming regulation, we'd welcome more transparency on the healthiness of your overall food sales. Would the Co-op commit to setting targets and reporting on increasing the proportion of sales generated from healthier products?
Good. Okay, so 3 good questions there. So, Steve, I'm going to give them you. First of all, about chickens. The second, people are disappointed we sold health, so why did we do that? And what's the answer around that? And then I think finally, are we prepared to commit to demonstrate that we're doing, stuff on obesity? So, Steve, you start with those 3 easy ones.
Alan, thank you. Good start to the day. Great questions. Sally's question on welfare, I think important just to remind everybody, if you needed reminding, that we've got a huge history in championing the highest of welfare across all of our British meats. Our free-range chicken today meets the better, higher standards that Sally asks about. But there is the truth that in our standard range, whilst meeting the red tractor standard, it does fall short of what's being asked. So we're going to trial this year a slower bird breed and see what customers and members' reaction to that is, recognising that they will have to pay slightly more for their chicken to reflect the higher standard, and we'll use that to help us decide where we go forward. On the second question around the sale of health, I think important just to emphasise that nobody likes to sell a business, and these are critical decisions that the board take time to decide upon. If you step back, however, and look at the reality of COVID, it accelerated 5 years of behaviour change in 12 months, and in a way turned our planning upside down. And what was clear to us was that in our larger businesses, the changes that we were seeing would mean that they would need more funding, more support than we had initially planned for in the short term. Areas like e-commerce, areas like greater value for money and lower pricing. And when the board looked at the return of that investment in those areas versus what would be 5 years before we saw any return in our health investments, it concluded that the right thing was to exit. I think important just to say, though, that we shouldn't see the exit as a failure. The clue is in the word, it's a venture, and the important thing about any venture is to scale it quick if you can, but if you can't for good reason, then learn fast and get out. And I think we continue to have the energy for future ventures. Our new Co-op Power is the case in point that we're currently exploring. But look at these things that some will fire and some won't. And then I think on the final question from Dr. Thompson, a very important subject around obesity. We will play our part in this space. We will dramatically increase a greater offer of healthy products into our food stores. We will dramatically increase the healthy promotions that we put in place. And I know Joe's committed to improving the communication through point of sale in store and on our websites. We're liaising with government around regulation, and we're also working with Healthier Lives UK to help us in our planning going forward. I don't think setting targets is quite right at this point. Giving the right available choice is the first thing for us to do. Hopefully that answers those 3 questions.
Good. Thank you, Steve. And I'm sure that we'll clearly return to some of those, particularly the last question. I just want to build on Steve's second point on health. It was a really good piece of work by our team, by our venture team, and as Steve said, it demonstrates A, what we can do, but B, also the power of the brand. But one of the things we have to constantly think about as a board is what can we really deliver against, what's our priority, and what should we focus our investment on, because always at any one stage, there's only a certain amount of money we can invest in any one stage. So we try and find the best one, not just from a commercial return, but where we also think it has and can have the biggest impact often in the fastest way. So now I'm going to really throw it open to live. I just need to explain how you do this if you're not before. If you're watching online on Zoom, if you type your question into the Q&A box, there's a Q&A box there. Mark, who you can't see, who's a really good-looking lad, he's over there. So Mark will then pass those questions to me, and then I will try and move those questions around. Now, the point of order that it's been recorded, and the idea is that we'll upload this onto YouTube next week, which is what we do. So if you don't want your name to be read out, because you have to give us your name, if you don't want your name to be read out, just indicate that when you ask the question so that your privacy is covered in the future. And as I say, we're going to try and go for as many as we can, and then those we never can cover. We only ever cover probably 25–30% of all of the questions, but we'll try and come back in some way, shape or form to do that. And you can do that. There's an AGM at coop.co.uk where you can then push those questions onto, and we will try and pick them up in some other way. So with that, we'll try and keep it going. So Mark, have you got probably a couple for me to start with? Yeah, go, shoot.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, we've got some great questions. First up from Graham. What is the longer-term strategy for food store acquisitions and closures, given COVID-19 has accelerated the trend towards home working and online trading that is expected to impact on town and city centre trading? That's from Graham.
Yep, good.
Joy Hendry, and this is a reflection of lots and lots of questions around our focus on plastics. What are Co-op doing to tackle the overuse of plastic wrapping? And then finally, Lynn Jones. She'd like to know if the board has considered a recommendation from health workers that Co-op put health warnings on fuel pumps at the point of use, as is already being done in Sweden, British Columbia and Massachusetts.
Good, very good. I didn't know the latter, actually, so that's a very interesting one. So let's start with Steve. I guess most of these are going to come your way. I might just say about food stores, if then Joy's question on plastics, and then this fuel one, which I think is quite interesting. I think just worth saying before Steve talks about food, I mean, we are ideally placed for the future. We are hyper-local. Our great strength is that we're hyper-local. We're in every single community. And therefore, the opportunity for us in that local sense through our convenience stores, particularly now that we can add delivery on the back of it. And remember, our delivery is, gone back to the past in many ways. It's, people on bikes take it to your door. I mean, that's where it was 60, 70 years ago. So, I think we're really well strategically placed in terms of our food business and our type of retail experience. So we should feel really, really good about that. And remember, that is on the back of, I think it's 8 years of like-for-like growth in that food business. But Steve, let me hand over to you on those 2 or 3, yeah?
Thanks, Alan. Great question on store strategy, and Alan, I think, hits it the nail on the head. Just around the corner, and the convenience strategy that food's been following for many years now puts us perfectly in the right place for more local shopping. But that said, we can see a substantial step change in home delivery and online shopping, which is why Chris Conway's team is absolutely accelerating our online offer. Today, sales of 130 million. In 3 years' time, we expect to get to around 400 million of online sales. Now, that means that we have to review our food estate with that in mind. And where we do conclude that a number of stores may well have to close, even not mistaking my point about local shopping, we do have levers now that we never had before in our wholesaling nicer business, and franchising will give us lots of choices to not just close stores, but actually to reinvent them through a franchised offer using a partner and keeping Co-op own brand product in the local community. But it will see us looking at this with a greater lens. We shouldn't underestimate, we have one of the largest on-the-ground estates, over 2,500 of our own stores, which is tough sometimes to get your arms around, but also a large cost for us to manage. So I think we have options, especially through a franchising route, but we're well placed within our food offer. But we should see this problem not just a food issue, but also in our funeral care business. And the team very quickly would have closed 160 branches this year and done a really good job holding on to that business through close funeral branches that have remained open. But there's no doubt that this move to e-commerce will now see us looking smartly and necessarily in our food and our funeral estate as we transition as quickly as we can to more online and e-commerce. The question on plastics, in the last 10 days, I think we've had a chance to launch a very well thought through, rounded and very well received sustainability 10-point plan, of which plastics is a key part of it. It's broad, it meets some of the scientific challenges that we have around climate change, but also some of the commercial challenges that our shoppers need our help with in bringing plant food to prices that they can afford and buy from us. And we've done a great job setting that out. On the specifics of plastics, all Co-op own brand packaging by this summer will be in sustainable packaging. I think that's a first in UK retailing. Great work driven by Eben Ferguson's team and Mike Fletcher. But we also have to get that balance between managing waste and doing our bit for the planet. And I think the team are working well through this very important element. On waste, just while I've got the chance, half of our stores now have a relationship with a local charity that take the waste from those stores every day and turn it into free meals. And by the summer, all of our stores will have the ability to send their waste to a charity. What we do need, however, is more charities coming through, and there is a good piece of work going on to build a platform with Microsoft to do just that. Secondly, I think a great point about our communication at our petrol pumps and this whole issue of fossil fuels. I think in truth, most people get that oil is a fossil fuel, it's bad for the climate, and what I'm not yet convinced about is by simply telling customers at our petrol pumps that that is the issue, is going to see any change in their behaviour. What I'm more interested in is a really important look at carbon labelling in the round, a far more detailed look at how all of our products, of which petrol would be one, could be labelled in a way that many of you will recall we pioneered on nutritional labelling about 15, 20 years ago. So I think that's where I want to go to start to address this issue, because I do think that will be the way that you'll see real behavioural change.
Good. Thanks, Steve, and thank you for those questions. While we're on that, Steve mentioned NISA. Special call out to, I know we've got NISA colleagues watching this, and also our partners at NISA. We've had a phenomenal year. We're very, very pleased that NISA is part of our family, the Co-op family. And again, it just gives the opportunity, particularly for Co-op brand, to be available to many more people than it would be if we were not doing that. So thank you to everybody engaged and involved in our NISA business. It's been a tremendous year and you've done a great job. Mark, you've got 3 more questions for me, yeah?
Absolutely. Yes, Alan. First one from Ian Harper about funeral care. The pandemic has put focus on the funeral care business, but in Ian's view, many of the sites are in a poor state of repair and don't show the Co-op in the best light. What is the strategy for the size of the funeral care network, and how much is to be invested in the next few years to bring the site up to standard?
Okay, any comment?
Next one is from Vivian Woodell, again, and it's reflected on quite a lot of questions, so this one's just pulling all those together. The Co-op Group has attracted national media attention over the large difference between executive salaries and those of shop workers. Does the board feel it is in tune with the feelings of members and the public on this issue? What steps are being taken to reduce inequalities in total remuneration?
And you got a third one?
And the final one is from Chris Hall. Our millions of members are an untapped resource which could enable us to have a really positive impact on the UK and beyond. What plans does the executive have to really engage and fully utilise the goodwill and power within that membership for 2021 and 22?
Okay, very good. So, Steve, or Shireen, why don't you pick up the funeral care point, and that'd be a very good one. I think Stevie, could you pick up on the exec salary piece of the differentials? And then I think, Steve, you do the members, and I might comment on all 3 of them when you've done that. So, Shireen, over to you to start with, yeah?
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for the question. Sam Tyrer and her team have been working on a strategy for our funeral care business that looks at our locations for our funeral homes as well as our care centres, but also revamps our product proposition, our pricing proposition, looks at the incoming regulation and how we engage with our members, our customers, and our communities. And clearly part of that is to look at our location strategy as well, and investment in our funeral homes and our care centres. One thing that I just want to assure everyone of is that we do absolutely have a plan to remediate issues in the homes and care centres that we have, and to make them and to improve them and to address some of those issues that came up in the question. So we do have investment put aside for the next few years, and we continue to balance that out.
Stevie, are you going to try and pick the other one up? Is that tech works? Stevie?
If the tech works, and I hope it does, Alan, thank you. And thank you, Vivian, for the question. The differential between executive salaries and colleagues on the front line is something that we are working hard on. Reducing inequalities for me is about increasing frontline colleague pay, and as I said in my report, we've now increased that by a smidge over 25% in the last 4 years, and we have been holding executive pay, executive salaries. Obviously there is a bonus differential through. And I think that when you look from the outside, you think, oh my God, our execs are paid a fortune. But let's not forget that we have a very complex, very large, one of the largest in the UK businesses, with a turnover over £10 billion. We need the absolute best of the best talent to run that business. I think we are extraordinarily lucky to have the talent that we do have at the top of the business. And remember, they are all earning substantially less than they would be earning at one of our non-cooperative competitors. So I think the simple answer to the question is we are looking to reduce the pay gap by increasing frontline colleague pay. That's the key.
Thank you, Stevie. I'll come back to that as well. Steve.
Thanks, Alan. Look, members and colleagues, when combined, actually are our perfect sword. We've seen the 1,000-member pioneers do extraordinary things out and about in community life over these last 12 months. And there is a very strong programme to accelerate that work, combining it with volunteering by colleagues and also reaching out to what members want over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. Finding practical ways where people can make a difference, I think, is the real unlock. We're seeing that in spades in the Join In programme, have your say. In our development of our newest fair trade chocolate bar, over 83,000 members told us what to do, what they thought, and they kind of co-created that product. And I'm a real supporter of that being one way where we can bring the members' voice into the products that we develop. You know, Nick's been championing this for a number of years. So we've got something on the ground called members and colleagues, an asset that I don't think other organisations have. And I know that the work that Charlotte Locke is leading is very much set about energising that, along with the vision that Ali Jones is driving through the organisation. And you'll see a lot more of activity in that space going forward.
Nick, why don't you talk a bit about how we can engage members more?
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Chris. Really good question. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities, but also the biggest challenges that the organisation has. So we are blessed that we've got millions of members in every nation and region, and they absolutely are a resource, Chris. You are right. But the challenge of activating them in a way which is relevant to the lives that people actually lead is difficult. I don't think anybody's cracked it anywhere in the world, frankly, in a large retail co-op. Clearly, a digital toolkit is going to be a very important part of how we meet that challenge. But the opportunity is just gigantic, isn't it? If we can really mobilise even a fraction of our members in a really dramatic way to reinvigorate, to revitalise the idea of a movement, it would be gigantic. And that sense of the question being not why join the co-op, but instead why not join the co-op? That should be the question, shouldn't it? So if you have any ideas, Chris, as to how we can do this, do share them.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I mean, just I mean, the point about the funeral homes, we have got some work to do there. There's no doubt about that. There is a plan to do it, and there's a degree of catch-up, but we're on it. But it's a very good point to make. On the members' point, we're really good. I mean, I was thinking, Nick's 2 million people on Join In, 2 million members have taken place in Join In. I can't think of any other organisation that would get that sort of response. And just the chocolate one, I thought, well, you know, I love chocolate, you know, but the chocolate one was phenomenal. But only yesterday, we had a board meeting yesterday, we were talking about our vision and how we were developing all of that. We had a panel of 10,000 members. So this has become a big step forward for us, I think. On the big decisions, we go to the members. And often we go to them direct. So yesterday we had feedback from what 10,000 members felt about how they felt about what we were doing, what we should focus on, and all those other things. It is our big point of difference, and it's the thing that we need to drive the most. So Chris, your point is a very, very good one, because we've done a huge amount of work. There's a huge amount of upside in this for us if we can crack it in a further way. And just on, you know, the whole remuneration is always, you know, a hot debate and is always difficult, I think. I think the approach we're trying to do, which is to bring colleagues' pay up, is really important in the mix. And I'd just like to say, you know, one thing about the execs, not to build on it. You know, we have a very, very strong team. You know, as strong a team as I've ever worked with. And we forget that the major reason they're here is not because of their pay. The major reason is they're here is they believe in a cooperative. And their passion for that is as big, if not bigger than, the reward that they get for it. And so we get the benefit of that, and I think we see that through our organisation. I think it's a lot for our colleagues on the shop floor for exactly the same way. So, you know, that's why we spend so much time trying to develop things that make things life better for our people, because a lot of what we get is for passion for what we do, and there's no price you can put on passion. Mark, you got some more questions for us?
I certainly have. The next set then, the first one is from Daniel Tabor. Our local co-op in Northants is very good, but when anything is not available, I'm told it's off or not on the plan. In other words, head office decides what's on the shelves. Can the process of store managers requesting items members and customers want in their local store be looked at? That's the first one. The second one is from an unknown member. Will I be able to collect membership points at NISA stores?
Yeah.
And then finally, from Stephen Gill, why does the Co-op Group open stores in areas that are already served by other co-ops? For example, the new store in Stockbridge in Edinburgh is only 200 metres from a Scotmid co-op. Okay, good question. The Daniel one, is Daniel a store manager? It doesn't say on here. But,
store manager, I had two things. First of all, we'd be better at selecting the range, and two, I've never got enough money to get enough people in the store. But it's a really good question. So local question, Steve, you pick that up on listings. I think the NISA point, if you can pick that up as well, and you know, why are we opening stores next to fellow cooperatives?
Thanks, Alan. Daniel, thanks for the first question. You know, I think we've made really good progress in our local ranging over the last 3 to 4 years. In fact, I'd probably argue that our stores have the best local ranges of any retailer in the UK, but clearly there is more that we can always do in this space. I think as long as we're satisfying customer and member needs, then we're doing a really good job. We should take a look at your specific area, whether or not the local team have missed some local products that you're now aware of that we should build in. So let me take that away, and I'm sure Joe will pick that up. On the second point about membership points, simple answer is no. Just a reminder for everybody, we don't own NISA shops. They're actually owned by our partners who stand over the profit that they make. Our relationship with NISA and our wholesaling business is a buying group, and our ability to use that to get Co-op own branded products out into millions of more homes than we would be able to do through just our own stores. But for that reason, there isn't points that you can get from the NISA business, because that would be coming off the owner's profit. And on the third point, and this is an interesting topic that has some history to it. I think what's really important is that, and I need to be clear here, we need to make our own commercial decisions for this society as other societies need to do. And the reason why that's critical is that we must comply with legislation. There is much that we do cooperate with the other independent societies on, but in the space of commercial dealings, like where do you put a new store, you must not decide to not do that because it infringes on another cooperative store that may be there. Now, to some of you, that might jar against the whole principle of what co-ops are all about, but the law is very clear here. And if we needed reminding, the penalty for not adhering to the law is significant. I think I'd be right in saying 10% of profits can be paid back to the government as a consequence if we do not follow the law. So collaborate on things that aren't commercial, but on commercial issues, we have to pedal our own canoe like everybody else does. And it's not, there is no grey here. It's very black and white.
Good. Thank you, Steve. Mark, you got us another three?
Absolutely, Alan. Next three, the first one is from Scott. With the bank now having long since been sold, are members going to be given the opportunity to invest more directly in our co-op? That's the first question. Second one, and it reflects quite a lot of questions around organics. Could we have more organic products? Appreciate milk and yoghurt, but much more, please. That was from Elizabeth. And then the final one from Kat Writer in this group is, what is your published gender pay gap and how do you propose to close it?
Okay, good. So, Steve, do you want to first two on organics? And Stevie, can you pick the gender one up? That would be amazing. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I might actually bring Shireen in here in a moment, but the thought behind moving away from the co-op bank was that we, at the right time, would then develop a life services proposition, which will allow us to go and explore financial services and see whether there is an opportunity for us to provide products without having a bank in the high street. And that's something that we're just about to start looking at now that the business has been successfully transitioned across into market study as far as our insurance business is concerned. And so I think, watch this space. There could well be new products where members could actually have a financial relationship with us going forward. On organics, it's an interesting point. We're very much set to turbocharge plant food in this space, as I said earlier on, as part of our 10-point plan around sustainability. As ever, our stores have walls and we're a convenience retailer, and therefore making decisions about ranges is the bread and butter of what the buyer's work is all about, and getting that balance is critical. And so in the same way that the previous questioner was asking about more local lines, the buyers are sitting there about making judgments on what are customers and members telling us they want. How do we actually hardwire in local lines? How do we develop more plant ranges? Is there a demand for more organic? And using insight that they're now able to glean, they'll get this 9 times right out of 10. So I just echo, it will be a blend of the right offer, given that we've got many demands and we have a store that in the main is about 3,000 square foot and the walls don't move.
Okay, Stevie, can you pick up the gender pay point?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I think that we have seen a reduction in both the median and mean gender pay gap over the last year. On median, it's gone from 9.2% to 6.3% this year. But I think more importantly, the gender pay gap hides, if you like, the gender role gap, which is the thing that we should be looking at, because 80% of our colleagues are on fixed hourly pay. So whether they are male or female, they get the same. And although we actually have more women than men on our executive, we've got fewer women than men overall in the most senior roles. So we have a very proactive program of growing talent internally, mentoring, sponsoring, and are making progress in senior female colleague promotion. And we will continue that work. But this is something that moves quite slowly because so many of our colleagues are on fixed pay.
Good. Thank you, Stephen. I think on that last point, I mean, the critical thing is that we continue to progress. And we do. And again, in a relative sense, we're in a good shape. We need to do more. I also think it makes a huge difference when so many of our top executive team are women. Because that shows other women in the organisation that this is not just an aspiration. In this organisation, if you're good enough, then you can progress through. And I think that's critical. That sort of role model plays a big part for me, and I'm really pleased. And I always say to everybody, we have more women execs than men. Why? Because they're very, very good. And that's the measure of certainly our team and certainly the top team we have from a female perspective. Mark, do you want to give us another three?
Absolutely, Alan. So the first one is, again, no name. Is it a condition of a franchise contract that staff are paid at least the same rate as Co-op Group staff? That's the first one.
Yeah.
Second one from Thomas Anderson. With regards to Co-op insurance, we have 900,000 plus policyholders shown in the annual report. What plans do we have to activate these customers as members?
Yeah.
And the final one from Jennifer Gould. She is involved in supporting venues and services to provide free sanitary products for their patrons and staff. She believes the Co-op stores across Liverpool area are involved in the scheme to provide access to the products to colleagues, and she's wondering if there's any plan to roll this out for all colleagues.
Good, okay. So the franchise and the last one, Steve. Shireen, you want to pick up the insurance point? Yep. Thank you. Start with Shireen, yeah?
Sorry, Mark, could you repeat the question on insurance?
It was just that we've got 900,000 policyholders. What's our plan to turn them into members?
Yeah, so we're clearly actively working with our insurance partners and within the Sizzle team to convert those customers into members. We know that our members are some of our most loyal customers, and they interact with us not just in the business where they became a member, but also across the board. So it's very important that we do continue to work to bring on as many members as possible, but also once they're members, ensure that they're as engaged as possible and that we communicate with them and help them to work across all of our business areas.
Steve?
Yeah, just coming back on the first question around pay in our franchise businesses. Was it franchise businesses?
Yeah, is the contract the same in franchise as it would be in the workforce?
Yeah, as long as it is a franchise, the pay rate should be the same because it's Co-op name above the door. If we were talking about NICER, however, it clearly isn't. You know, sometimes we describe NICER as football and Co-op as rugby. And therefore, the terms and conditions in those businesses need to remain separate. But if Co-op is above the door, then the same terms and conditions would apply. And then just on the sanitary point, you know, I think this is something that I know Matt Hood's team is championing hard about how we play our part in this space and how we bring this important issue to bear for people to understand and play our part. I think I'll take that away and we'll come back to answer the specifics in which where do we go next.
Okay, good. And I think we should go back, actually, because I think that's a very, very good point. Mark, you got me another 3.
Yeah, we're at the final couple of questions, so if any members have got any more questions, make sure they're on there. So the first one is, will the executive commit to providing at least a weekly autistic-friendly hour where the music is switched off in the store and the customers understand why this is being done?
Yeah.
And then further steps to be looked at to make our stores autism-friendly. The second one from Chris Hall, member pioneers could be a good idea, but to succeed, they have to be properly resourced and have an effective support structure to enable them to engage with the communities within which they operate. What will the executive do to make an effective member pioneer network for 2021 and the coming years?
Okay. Steve, you want to pick those up? I might comment on member pioneers. I might get Nick to say a few words as well. Okay.
Okay. Look, we welcome all individuals into the co-op and any form of disability. We want to make the shopping trip as pleasant as possible. The issue of our radio and music playing in our stores is a real Marmite issue. We have some, in fact, probably the vast majority of customers that tell us that they like it, and then there are some, in this case, that do struggle with it. I think it's worthy of taking away and seeing what we might do in this space. I do think that overall, though, having pleasant background of music, as long as it's not turned up to 10, 25 decibels, does make a better, pleasant, more shopping for the customer. But on the specifics of autism, I can understand why that would be difficult. And, you know, in the same way, in the last 12 months, we've had a special hour for key workers to come and shop in our stores, then I think this is an interesting thing for us to look at as well. On making member pioneers effective, honestly, the work that Rebecca Birkbeck's team has done in the last 12 months has been very much focused about setting them up for success, making sure that the pioneers have a great induction, are aware of everything that we're doing with the vision, and everything very much focused around them being a real success. I know Rebecca will be listening to this. If there are some bits that we can improve upon from what I think is a really good program, and they're doing, as I said earlier on, an incredible job for us, then we'd welcome to hear it, to help us build and keep evolving it. But I think from where we started to where we are now, this is really running well.
Nick, do you want to comment on the member pioneers?
Yeah, thanks again, Chris, for the question. I agree completely with the point of the question and with Steve's sentiment. I think an important reflection for me over the last 6 years is the degree to which the organisation has got really serious about the work that it does in the community, and we invest millions and millions of pounds of organisational resources and also millions and millions of pounds of members' money through the various different schemes. The Member Pioneer programme is tremendously valued in the business, and quite rightly so, because it is the primary delivery agency that we have in the communities that we serve. And you only need look at the impact that Member Pioneers have had during the pandemic year to see the difference that it makes. I think there are still some further areas that we could do better. So I think there's this continual issue around the ability for member pioneers to communicate. It's a challenge, and I think we're looking at a variety of digital opportunities for that to be carried out. But an interesting innovation, and one that the council really championed, came to fruition in 2020, which was the advent of member pioneers leading local forums, bringing members, organisations from the community, colleagues from the different businesses together so that they could cooperate. And I think that is a really important innovation.
Good. Well, I'm a massive fan of the member pioneers. So any of you listening, I absolutely think you do a fabulous job. And it's one of the ways the council used me to put pressure on Steve and Joe to make sure that we've got sufficient resource and the right numbers of them. So, I think they've done an amazing job. There's much more they can do. I think it's this thing about being in the community is such a big deal for us. And the member pioneers are, in many ways, with our colleagues in the store, the leads on this. So, okay, well, I think we'll move on then. So thanks for the... And where we say we'll come back to you, we will come back to you. I mean, on those points, we're not just pushing them to one side.
Alan, sorry, can I just interrupt on one point?
Yeah,
Sorry, just on the franchising question around common pay, I said that it would be common for the co-op fascia. I was wrong. The franchise is clearly run by a partner and they will set the pay. So just to be clear to everybody, franchise store pay rates will be different even if it has the co-op fascia above the door. I think important just to make that point.
Okay,
Sorry.
Good. Thank you. So I think what we'll do now is go through the voting on the motions, though obviously those online can't vote live, so they've already been submitted, so we've got those in. We've got the 20 attendees here who will vote live. Can I just ask those members that are here in Angel Square, if you've got a ballot paper, which hopefully you've got, see them being waved in the air, and can you vote on all of the 9 motions? And if you can cast your vote now, that would be really helpful. And then a member of the team will collect those when you've completed them. So I'll just let you do that. So we've only got a small number, obviously, here, which was the numbers really to make us quorate. And the majority of our members have already given their voting instructions prior to the meeting. So I'm going to announce the provisional results now. Obviously, they'll be verified and they will be published on Monday. And I'm going to do them in groups. So if you look at motions 1 to 5, which should come up now. So here are the provisional results for the first 5 motions, and they have all been passed. So thank you for that. And as I say, these will be up when verified on Monday. If I look at 6 to 9, then these are the next 4 motions. Again, these have all been passed. And thank you for sharing your views on these important topics. Part of democracy is we don't have to agree on everything, and debate is a very good thing, and I think we've seen a bit in that. So they'll be verified and they'll be published and they'll be on our website on Monday. Also, as I said earlier on, we've had a result on the member-nominated director elections, which have taken place because Hazel stood down. If we put up the MMD results slide, you can see or will see that Kate Allen has been appointed to be a member-nominated director. Sandra and Wendy, unfortunately, were not. They were, I have to say, the joint working committee on this, which is a joint committee of the board and the council, put together a very good shortlist. And all 3 of these candidates were exceptional. And so it's a pleasure for Kate to get appointed. But I'd like to pass my thanks on to Sandra and Wendy for standing, and they also were outstanding candidates. So I think that is the end of this live piece. Steve has done another record just to talk a bit about the future. A few words from me. First of all, I think the cooperatives, not just this one, all of them in this country, have made a tremendous impact this year. I can't think of many other organisations, probably outside the NHS, that have made that same contribution. And we should all feel very proud of being members of something that has made that sort of impact. Commercially too, I think we've had a pretty successful year in very difficult circumstances, and again, all credit to all of our people for that. And I actually think on the social side of what we do, which is so important, what happens in the community and what we do in the broader sense, we've probably done more things than we've ever done before. Now, that doesn't mean we get everything right, and it doesn't mean that we haven't got a lot to do, and it doesn't mean that we've many things that we can still do better and change. But it does mean that we are making progress. And being part of a cooperative is very interesting. Yesterday, when we got the feedback from the 10,000 members about how proud they are of what we do. And this passion word that I often talk about, so much of what we do is driven by the passion of all of us. And I think that has come through in spades in the past 12 months. And we have also shown tremendous resilience, which I think has made a huge difference. I also think there are two things that have been mentioned to me, I think I mentioned them before, which are really important going forward. Two skills really. One is kindness. You know, I think this organisation, the co-op, and I mean all the cooperatives have become very kind, and I think that's an important thing for us to be. And we also show our vulnerability, and that's not a bad thing too. So on behalf of all of us on the board, I'd like to thank all of our colleagues again, all of our members again, all the members of the council, everybody who I think should, although we can do a lot of things better, should be very proud of the contribution that we've made this year. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to talk a little bit more about the future. Thank you.
Now, I talked earlier about our vision of cooperating for a fairer world being our North Star. In truth, 2020 put our vision into the sharp focus, but we know it's not job done, and the future will present us with many more challenges. Challenges exposed, challenges that never went away, challenges that were created. Our aim is to help the nation and our own co-op to build back better, but also, as I've said, to build back different. The challenges we as a nation face locally, nationally and internationally are crying out for businesses with purpose baked into their DNA. I'm sure, like me, in many different ways, you've witnessed a surge in community solidarity and a sense that we have a duty towards each other in our neighbourhoods and our wider communities. As a co-op, our lifeblood is the understanding that the world should and can be a better place for everyone. Our vision of cooperating for a fairer world has never been more appropriate and timely for the world we face into, and I'm determined that together we will deliver it. We're going to make things fairer for our colleagues, making sure they get a fair deal and that they can fulfil their potential. Last month, we aligned 33,000 colleagues' pay to the real living wage. We want to create a working environment that's truly inclusive and unique to Co-op, one in which we champion colleague differences, their safety and well-being, and the opportunities for progression. We want colleagues to feel proud to work for us. Earlier, I talked about our Safer Colleagues, Safer Communities work. We've invested in our stores to help colleagues feel safer, to deter violence and shoplifting, and we've aligned with local causes and national initiatives that address the root causes of crime. At the heart of our campaign has been our lobbying for greater protection for shop workers. Just like emergency workers, our colleagues and other shop workers across the UK are asked to uphold the law when it comes to things such as age-related sales. Therefore, we believe they should be afforded the same additional protection in the law when it comes to violence and abuse. Help us create a fairer world for our colleagues by heading over to www.coop.co.uk/safety for more information on how you can engage with your local MP and support our campaign. We're going to make life fairer for our members in our communities, where our work on improving social mobility will focus in on access to food, mental well-being, education, skills and employment for young people, whilst maintaining our commitments to diversity and inclusion. And let's be in no doubt that our increased focus on these issues is needed now more than ever. In March this year, we conducted our own in-depth analysis into the challenges facing local causes that we continue to support via our local community fund. The findings were so insightful in telling us that whilst most causes had seen their overall funding reduce, demand for their services had increased. This meant they had to innovate and use agile means to maintain their local support. And this resilience and innovation is so cooperative in its approach and will continue to feed our community plan in the months and years ahead. Our support, however, needs to go hand in hand with a renewed commitment to help the sector. So alongside over 900 businesses, we've called on the Chancellor to make sure that social enterprises and cooperatives are given a helping hand to kickstart our national recovery as we emerge from the pandemic. Now, we know that mutuals and cooperatives are genuine in their belief that talent is everywhere, but opportunities aren't, particularly in our nation's youth. That's why apprenticeships are a vital part of the lives of thousands of young people as they start their careers, and essential for the UK economy and business competitiveness. We've identified a great opportunity to make the system fairer, more inclusive, and benefit communities which are disadvantaged. We know we can't do that alone, so we're calling on other employers to join us in this important initiative. We've pledged £500,000 of our own money to kickstart the new pioneering fund to improve opportunities for underrepresented groups. This apprenticeship levy sharing scheme is designed to ensure opportunities are fairly distributed, and we believe it will help close an opportunity gap that impacts so many young people. Our ambition is to get the funding pot to £15 million. And we've invested further in a unique partnership with the Youth Endowment Fund and the I Will Fund to collectively invest over £5 million to empower young people to lead change in their communities, giving them a real chance to make their communities safer and fairer places to live. This investment will build a groundbreaking network of peer researchers aged between 16 and 25 who will find out about young people's experiences, and they'll then be supported to take what they learn and turn it into action. All too often, young people who come from a background of violence aren't heard, but change won't happen if young people aren't at the heart of it. So that's why the partners have come together to give young people the chance to take the lead, so that they're shaping their future, the future that they want to see. Their voices must be at the heart of decision making. And we've also continued to appreciate that our lives are full of challenges, which can sometimes feel difficult to cope with, and that's been exaggerated during the pandemic. But if you have the right support around you, the ups and the downs of life can be more manageable. And that's why in April, we were delighted to announce the extension of our current partnership with Mind, as well as the Scottish Association for Mental Health and also Inspire in Northern Ireland, to bring communities together to improve mental wellbeing. This extended partnership will see our fundraising target increased to £8 million. Together, we've spoken out through national campaigning and influencing to make a real difference. And so far, our amazing colleagues, even when faced with the personal and professional challenges that the pandemic has brought, have raised over £3 million for our chosen charity partners. Although our community fundraising activities have been impacted by the pandemic, we hope to restart local support in 2021. And finally, as I talked about earlier, our work will continue to make sure our co-op is a place where everyone is included, regardless of their race, their religion, their background, or how they identify. We've already made some bold commitments to racial equality and inclusion, and together, with the ongoing support of our equality and our inclusion think tank, we're going to deliver on them. And I look forward to reporting on our progress and what we've achieved later in the year. Given the way the pandemic has touched all our lives over the past year, we could be forgiven for simply focusing our efforts on the levelling up agenda close to home. But we equally know that there remains an ongoing global issue. So we are also going to play our role in making things fairer for our planet by delivering a leading-edge sustainability plan which focuses heavily into the challenges and opportunities in tackling carbon reduction. Over these last 12 months, coronavirus has shaken our world, but the threat of global warming hasn't gone away. We know that we are all in part responsible and that we must do more, and we must do more quicker. Earlier this month, we unveiled our Climate Change Action Plan, rooted in science and cooperation. From products and packaging to power and pension fund investments, this plan commits all of our co-op to reduce the impact of our operations and services on the planet. Unprecedented cooperation is needed here. We are signed up to the BRC's Net Zero by 2040 roadmap, getting us to net zero 10 years ahead of the government targets, and we'll look to give preferences to partners, suppliers and organisations that are committed to this same target. This year, all our own brand products will be in easy-to-recycle packaging, and we'll roll out our film collection scheme in every community. We also recently made a market-leading investment in the pricing of our plant-based range called Grow, in some cases reducing prices by up to 50%. This will see our pricing on a par with similar non-vegan products, making these products more affordable to our customers and members, and allowing them to make a positive contribution to the climate change agenda. In 2021, our approach to responsible sourcing will go even further. Deforestation and land use is one of the leading causes of climate change and biodiversity loss worldwide. We've made huge strides already in this area. However, we will go further. For example, we will build on existing carbon offset targets for soy in our supply chain by making 100% of soy used in our supply chain physically sustainable by 2025. Alongside this, we're working with Chester Zoo on a reforestation programme of former palm oil plantations in Borneo. And by 2025, our target is to have replanted 50,000 trees. And in fair trade, we will build on the outstanding work delivered over the past 25 years by setting targets to achieve our ambition to be the UK's biggest supporter of fair trade and continue to grow our contribution to producer communities around the world. For our vision to be realised in the next few years, we'll also have to win as a co-op within our chosen markets, and we must continue to make membership of our co-op society even more compelling and meaningful. We must recognise that COVID has accelerated change at an alarming rate, and we'll have to be even more agile and adapt more decisively if we are to succeed. Although we are a national co-op society, our focus will be on hyperlocal, on innovation and delivering value for money on the ground, being there for our members and our colleagues where they need us most. So we will do this by investing in the right areas, innovating in the right way, and by removing processes which erode value instead of creating it. We'll continue to invest heavily into price and service propositions. In food, this will mean building upon the recent launch of our Honest Value range and price investment programme, which cuts the cost of hundreds of everyday food items in our stores. In funeral care, it will mean developing further all the amazing thinking we brought forward during the pandemic, which enabled people to still say their best possible goodbyes to loved ones, despite the restrictions that were in place. In insurance, it will mean capitalising on the opportunity we now have to bring more market-leading products to our members' attention. And in legal services, it will mean developing more industry partnerships and increasing further our leading-edge digital capabilities. Our commitment to convenience will, of course, remain, and we will roll out more new stores where appropriate. But this will now go hand in hand with the major expansion of our e-commerce capabilities across all our consumer-facing areas. Convenience will likewise go hand in hand with cooperation, and we have exciting plans to grow our nicer wholesale business in the years ahead, attracting more independent partners to experience and value our co-op difference. Similarly, Co-op Power, our green energy business-to-business buying group, will also expand, which won't only be great news for our co-op, but great news for our partners who are also looking at ways to reduce their carbon footprint. So despite the economic uncertainty that we're all facing, we do have exciting and ambitious plans to grow. But underpinning all of this will be my commitment to you, that co-op membership will always be at the heart of our thinking and our decision-making. And I want to stress that we will continue to face through these tough decisions and challenges along the way. But we will prevail because cooperation starts here and cooperation is needed more than ever in our society. We will build back better and different, difference being the key. If it's not different, we won't talk about it. Thank you again to our 63,000 colleagues, our members and our pioneers, and all of you out there watching and supporting today. It's a year that will go down in history, but a platform for a brighter future where we can cooperate for a fairer world.